Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave. Let's bring our guest today. Hello, Rick. How you doing? Is DeStefanis? I got that wrong.
DeStefanis, good to see you, Ed.
DeStefanis. That must have been fun in boot camp.
Oh, well, you know how it is.
Yeah, I have Parcaut. I know exactly how it is. Yeah, no one ever got it right, and then I always had those good nicknames. All right. The only question I ask, I researched you, but not everybody else is going to know. You were let me back up. You were in the army, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And you probably didn't get a choice back in Vietnam. You were drafted, or did you enlist?
I was about to be drafted and enlisted.
Okay.
And that's, I actually got an early out because they didn't honor their contract.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I served 2 years.
Okay. Well, let's back up. So you were going to be drafted, and who was drafting you? Because you chose the army, right? Or were
Yeah,
they?
well, essentially the way the draft works, you go in and you're in what they call, I think it's called the enlistment center, and stand around in boxers, and everyone goes in the army as a rule, unless you've pre-enlisted for another branch. And there were some Navy guys there, and they had the special privilege of during the if they were drafted, no, excuse me, if they enlisted for the Navy, those guys got involuntarily selected for the Marines. They would go along and say, "Big boy," he'd say, "I'm in the Navy." They said, "No, you're not. You're in the Marines. Come on."
It's the same service. I was a corpsman in the Navy, so
You
you
know.
know, I understand. Yeah, but and people don't understand. I didn't understand when I joined, and this is back in the '80s, that the Marine Corps was a department of the Navy. I didn't know that, and I
Mhm.
only figured that out by watching Navy football. Right, because then underneath their name it said, so he's going in the Marines. I was like, what the heck? And that's how I realized how it was. Wasn't the smartest kid in the bunch, but
I hear you. I'm right with you.
well, I mean, I wasn't around it. It was not my dad and uncle was Air Force in Vietnam,
Mhm.
and they were getting drafted more than anybody, right? Because they had to build that up. So they were, because a lot of people don't realize that the Air Force was a spinoff of the Army in the
Right.
50s.
Army Air Force.
Yeah. And so they had to build it up somehow. So that was the main people who were getting drafted for most of the time. Even though you said Army, they could have said Army, and oh, you're in the Air Force. The same way they did at the Navy and the Marine Corps. Even though they're separate branches, but back then they had just spun it off.
Yeah.
All right, so you just killed my normal one is I ask you why you joined the Army, but you didn't really have a choice from what I'm hearing.
No.
Yeah. And then why did you have a choice to be a paratrooper?
No, but when you're 18, you don't have good sense, right?
My son is airborne medic, and he got first stationed in Alaska. Now he's in Washington. He just got back from Korea 2 weeks ago.
Well, the reason I volunteered for Airborne at the time was the rumors, the talk, and everything was that a lot of the units outside of the Airborne were the morale wasn't that good. Heavy drug use, that type of thing, and I thought, well, I'd rather get in there with those units where everyone's pulling together, and that's where I ended up. But as a matter of fact, I mean, my story's unique. Um, when I enlisted, they said you can enlist for an MOS and um, or duty station. I enlisted duty station. They narrowed it down though to some like Fubai or Camp Eagle, Republic of Vietnam, but I actually didn't go. There was five of us that went through infantry training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, in Tiger Ridge, all that very intense training.
During the summer,
And
I assume.
say again,
During the summer, I assume.
oh, of course, a lot of wild boar and a lot of snakes, a lot of mosquitoes. It was pretty nasty, but anyway,
Because
very realistic.
I did one of my A schools or my specialty schools that was in the Navy actually at San Antonio, and we ended up having a choice to go to do our week that we had in multiple places. One of them was Fort Polk, Louis, but I didn't get that one. I got somewhere else. We went straight up. And that's why I only know about those things, is because I was right there in Texas for a period of time.
Well, you know about the weather though, and
Oh,
the
the humidity
intense
was San
humidity.
Antonio was horrible. I can only
I know.
imagine. Yeah.
Probably very similar. The long and short of the enlistment thing though was that we all, I kind of talked the other guys into it, really. I mean, several of them were already considering it. We had the conversation. Eventually, there was a group of 5 of us volunteered for airborne. So after Polk, we were going to Benning for jump school. Well, the night we got our orders, we all got orders at. Excuse me. Let me clarify. The night we finished our airborne training at Fort Benning, we all got orders, and we all had orders for places like the 173rd Airborne, the 101st, 75th Rangers, different stuff like that, all in Nam. And they issued our orders. We were rolling mattresses and all the stuff you do to leave, and they called a formation again, made everyone fall out. They said, if we call your name, step forward and bring your orders. And I was one of the only of my group that did that. And okay. And then they gave the orders back and said, you're going to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I didn't, what it was at the time, I believe the Russian army was putting armored divisions along the European border, and they got a little nervous because the 82nd was a skeleton at Fort Bragg. They had bled everyone out for the Vietnam War, and I went there. These other guys went to Nam and spent a year.
Wow.
About a year later, we're doing what we do every morning. You know about it. You fall out in formation.
Yeah. See, I only heard about that because my son. That's not how it is in the Navy. When I was at Camp Pendleton at the hospital, there was no falling out every day. It was like going to work. I'd ride my bike into work, and
wow.
it's totally different world than what Army. I saw the Army. Everybody, I'm like, you do that every day? I'm like, okay, that's not what I said. They raised adults where I went.
Well, we were doing our run in formation up, I think it's Ardennes Boulevard there at Bragg. And I had the nickname of D for years. And I hear this voice coming the other way from another group. D, just screaming. And then I see this guy burst out of the formation. And it's one of my buddies. It's been a year. And he saw me first. And of course, all the lieutenants are yelling and screaming to get back in formation. And we did. But turns out there was 2 of them were also back in other units, and eventually we all hooked up, and we began. You get a lot of weekends, 3-day passes, and that type of thing. And we all had motorcycles, and we rode up and down the East Coast mostly, anywhere from Jacksonville, Florida, as far north. We kind of got away from the coast up there around Maryland and went over into Pennsylvania and southern New York, places like that. Long and short of it, I heard a lot of really, I don't know how to put it, sad stories. These guys would never talk, not even to the other guys. But after a few beers, bourbons, or other things, they talk, and they tell stories that actually, well, let me put it this way: until you've seen a paratrooper with tears in his eyes, you don't know what a truly emotional thing is. But these guys had been through hell for a year, and every one of them had a different experience. And my thing was, guys, you need to write this stuff down. And they couldn't, they wouldn't. And I asked them, well, let me write it down. And no. And even after we all got out and we'd stay in touch, I begged them to let me write their stories. I think it was such a bitter experience for them. They just, well, one of them said, no, I'm not going to live that again.
Yep. And then fortunately, we don't realize it until we live it again. We can't get rid of it.
Exactly. I didn't know it at the time.
Well, most people don't. Most people don't understand. I always tell people, you forgive not for them, but for you when someone does something to you. You don't do it for them, you do it for yourself, so you can just move on. And people don't realize that when you don't talk about these things, and this is why I bring it up, because this is what I've been doing, helping the brave for 4 years, and I've talked to so many people, and you hear this. Different stories, different timelines, different stories, but basically the same thing. It's all hurt and need and stuff that we need to talk about, and we don't want to talk about it, and we need to talk about it.
That's what I learned about in later years, and still didn't fully understand it till I started writing it. And whoa, it got tough, because I knew everything I wrote was fiction, because they never wanted me to use their names or really to tell their stories at all. I did it on my own, and a lot of it is multiple episodes or events actually put in together, which didn't truly happen together, so to speak, say as in one novel that it's in. But that's what I ended up doing. I went to work on the railroad right out of the military. It was a great job. My wife, when I told her I wanted to quit and go back to school, she said, "Have you lost your mind?" I said, "I never had one to lose," but yeah.
So what did you do on the railroad?
I was a brakeman and conductor. I worked for the Illinois Central. Yes, I actually worked the city of New Orleans a few times, Arlo Guthrie's city of New Orleans passenger train a few times, but mostly it was freight trains. Just on the road all the time, and that's part of the reason I quit. My son was born in 1980, and it just wasn't a life with so many of the men out there had broken families and talked about their children hating them, and I didn't want that, so I quit and went back to school. Eventually, I worked painting houses and working part-time on truck line. The railroad would call me every once in a while, and I actually was able to build up enough credits over the years till I went to work full-time for FedEx that I was able to get railroad retirement eventually. But yeah, I quit the railroad altogether when I went to work for FedEx and finished school. And while I was there, I went to the University of Alabama, and there was an elderly, I forget what they call him, professor emeritus, whatever, that saw some work I did from one of my literature classes. I had a ton of, what do they call them, electives that I could take. And reading was my thing. I loved to read, and writing wasn't really, but I did it because I wanted to learn a little bit about it. And he said, "You really need to consider writing." I said, "Okay." And my senior project, a 12-hour project, was writing a novella that was a conglomeration of some of the stories I had heard from these guys.
For people who don't know, what's a novella?
A novella is a short version of a novel. What is it? I think 60 pages, 70 pages, something like that. And, but I only had to put it in a manuscript form. And he even told me when I graduated I needed to keep writing and write a full novel, which I did eventually. Yeah, had children.
So how long did you work for FedEx?
I actually worked 22 years, quit right there at the end because I got one of those offers I couldn't refuse from GE. I went over there, worked for a few years, and then I was able to start writing for real.
And so how long have you been writing?
Well, that novella was written in, I think, 87 or 88. and that was my first really lengthy anything. I had made a few stabs at some notes, but when you're trying to support, a wife and two children, then you don't do a lot of writing. You work all the time. I mean, we painted houses, we put up fences, we did everything you could think of. And I was going to school part time at the same time, and it took me 11 years, I think it was, to get the degree. I was working all the time, really.
Well, you got it. That's all that matters, right?
I guess.
All right. So now, how many novels have you put out?
Oh, I think it's 12. Let's see.
When did your first one come out?
Let's see. It's 10. Yeah, 12. 2010. That would have been actually the Gomorrah Principle was the first novel, and then everyone was saying sequel, and it wasn't. It's just no way it was set up for a sequel, or that I wanted it to be a sequel. So I did Melody Hill as a prequel.
Hold on. Rick, you're going too fast. I have questions. I wanted you to finish that. Did you self-publish or have a publisher?
I actually, at one point, had an agent, and she actually had a potential buyer, a publisher, one of the big houses in New York, and they wanted. She came back and said, "Let's talk about this." And she essentially, what the editor that looked at it wanted me to gut Gomorrah Principle and take out my secondary female protagonist. It was a parallel story. Young kid from up in East Tennessee mountain area goes to Vietnam. His girlfriend, who objects strenuously and swears never to speak to him again, tries to go to Nashville and become a country and western singer. So that was the gist of the whole story. And I refused. I just was not going to change it. I was still writing for the fun of it. And I kind of got lucky in the beginning there. And sometimes I wonder if I made the mistake, but I don't think I did. That I refused. Of course, typical NYC fashion, she gave me her blessings, we'll say, and we parted ways. And that was right around 1999 or 2000, somewhere around there. And I never did do anything with it for about 10 years. I was so, I guess, depressed that I had blown the chance, but I just didn't want to. I was making all the money I wanted to make at FedEx, and that just wasn't a goal of mine that I would be willing to gut my first book, especially because a lot of the story was based on one of the guys' stories getting involved in the Phoenix program. And I just wasn't going to change it.
Well, and then so in 2010, I assumed you self-published.
I did. I'm sorry. Yes, I did.
And the reason I bring that up is a lot of people don't realize when you sell your rights to your book, you lose all rights to your book. If you self-publish, you still own your rights to everything.
All your books, all your royalties, everything.
But I mean, it's, sometimes this, when you go to a publisher, they make you, it depends on what you're trying to do. When you said you had 12 books. So people are used to your books coming out now. So you must have a good following.
I haven't done a good job of marketing, but yes, I've got thousands of reviews on the books. But all I've done is write and run a few ads like on Amazon and Facebook, and I've gotten quite a few readers, and they'll send me contact me through my website and things like that, and we talk. But the whole gist of what you do is included in my books. I don't know if you realize that. You read it, how much you've had the opportunity to look at it, but every one of my books, not every one, but almost all, first of all, they have a strong secondary female protagonist, because none of us go into the military or go to war alone. At least most of us don't. And there's other people in our lives, whether they're mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, that type of thing, children, whatever. And they carry some of the same, I think, post-traumatic stresses and the actual stresses at the time that the soldier carries. And every one of them, not again, I'm over speaking, almost all of the books they don't end, they're not just battle stories or war stories, so to speak. Almost all of them have an element of after the war. What happens to that soldier after the war? And one book in particular, Rayford's MVP, it's strictly, well, the first 6 chapters take place in Vietnam, and the rest of the book is this guy dealing with post-traumatic stress and how he eventually makes his way out of it after years. And I think that's, well, I'll put it this way. I have a friend out in Denver who's a surgeon out there, and he's also a retired brigadier with Army Special Forces. And but being a medical doctor, anyway, he said Rayford's MVP should be read by everyone working in the VA hospital systems.
Yeah. Don't get me started. There's stuff in my medical record about in the VA because I had to upload it for something, and it was like because I make statements like, now I understand why veterans commit suicide in the parking lot because of how hard it is to get in here for PTSD, and you guys cancel appointments and all. I've said it all because I want it recorded, and every time because I've been doing the show and I deal with so many people who, one, they don't ask for help. We never do, but we got to get help, and. Yeah. And the PTSD, I was listening to somebody else, and maybe that you could. He said one of the biggest problems for most people why they don't, if they can't deal with their PTSD, is some of it is a moral injury because of how we were put on. We weren't put on their morals were not to go kill somebody, ended up killing somebody, or stuff like that. And it deals with, and they until they're able to deal with that, they cannot overcome their PTSD.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted, and I don't call it a disorder because Doc Enzenauer, the same man I just mentioned, he said it's not a disorder. He said it's a syndrome. It's expected to happen. It should happen because of what it is. He said, don't call it a disorder, call it a syndrome. He's pretty tight. I like the guy.
Well, and here I'll say the issue with that is that, but that's how the government puts it in the system, right? It's PTSD. My daughter has special needs in the coordinated government. She's retarded. That's just how it's worded. It seems real, but that's how they word that stuff. And I was trying to explain to people, and when you deal with PTSD, you're dealing with anxiety and depression, and it's not one or the other. It's usually both that you're dealing with one day, or and it happens. We never get over it. We just learn how to deal with it.
What's really, since I've become so involved with this post-traumatic stress, what amazes me is people say, well, he never showed it. What it is, a lot of people come out and they compartmentalize. They bury it. I mean, I know a guy, matter of fact, we're good friends. He doesn't live far from here. Marine, served 2 tours. Both tours ended up with wounds in Vietnam, and no one knew for a long time, many years, and only when he got older, in the last, I'd say maybe 7, 8, 10 years, I don't know exactly how long it was, but when it first hit him, it hit him like a brick, and he had been worked in Detroit or somewhere up there in Michigan as a union representative and a corporate representative and several other things with the automobile industry. And then he started his own business, ran a sporting goods shop, and moved here to Mississippi and ran a successful gunsmithing shop, still does, but it just came on him. And I know another guy that I just went to lunch with him today, and he had the same thing. This guy was a captain in the Delta in Vietnam, and they ran special recon units. He worked in the same outfit Hackworth was in, and he worked for Firestone for years, and he was my first boss at FedEx. As a matter of fact, it was a very unique introduction. I tell you about it if you have the time sometime.
Well, what I found out is, so like myself, I have PTSD syndrome, whatever you want to call it, and it wasn't from combat. It was from, I worked as an EMT. I was a corpsman in the Navy, worked on them with the Marines at Camp Pendleton, but I pulled duty as an EMT at night, and we get pulled out to the I-5, all these different things and stuff we've seen, plus what I did in my day job. And I got out of the medical field and did something totally different. Well, I was a workaholic, exerciseaholic. I did all that. And then in the last couple of years, I stopped doing all that stuff because, got a bone-on-bone knee and a couple other things. And these things pop up. And what we're finding, and what I realize in talking to people is, as we get to a point where our kids are gone, it's just you and your wife, or it's just you have a lot more time to think about things.
Yeah,
that's when it starts coming back. Because when I went in and was talking to them, I was like, "This is so weird," and they're like, "No, this is how it normally happens. It's you don't have any issues forever, then all of a sudden your kids are gone. It's just you and the wife, or something else happens, and then you have this time to start thinking about things, and it pops back up, and then now you have to deal with it." But I also know the other guys who abused until their 40s, that, alcohol, everything else, and then finally realize to deal with the stuff because they've ruined every relationship they've had. There's both sides of the coin. It's nothing there's no perfect way to deal with this stuff.
No.
And it does need to be dealt with, but I just think people just don't know what to ask, how to get help.
I've offered my services, but they're pretty independent. Like you said, the VA has their own little methodology and rules and everything. Some of them have done exactly what you mentioned earlier. They've started writing groups for the vets to come in and start writing about their experiences. And like you said, it's cathartic. It makes a big difference. You got to relive it and get it out of your system, because the more you bury it, the bigger the explosion is going to be when it comes out.
Yeah. And then, if you deal with some of the stuff, they say, well, if you take the sound away, is it better? And so you start looking at things differently in a different aspect of that same event to help you deal with how to process what you went through and everything about it. I just think you have World War II that didn't have as much, and it's all because they were stuck on ships for months, and so they processed it. There's people who were in in prisons in Vietnam, right, in the Hanoi Hilton and places like that when they didn't have any, because they were in there for years and they dealt with it.
Yeah.
And
I think one of the big things too is that as intense as the combat was in places, things like World War II, the modern Army since then, well, even since Korea, really, it's been since Vietnam where they really developed the air mobile and all this. The instance of involvement with these stressful situations was much more frequent. I read nothing but nonfiction for research for my books, and you read some of this and you're amazed. They were in battle this day and the next week and then the next month, and they were just constantly, where you read about the World War II vets, they did have some relief. In other words, they couldn't get them to the front every day, which you guys, the guys in Vietnam and these other wars, my God, you come back and you change clothes and you get on a pair of socks that doesn't have holes in them, they got you right back out there again. And that, when you talk about being a medical technician, you finish sewing up and putting together vets one day and you think you're done, and the next day here comes a fresh group. It's more nonstop, but I think there's no recovery time.
Yeah, and I've talked to so many people. I haven't, how many times they've been over there and what they've been dealing with, and how many times they were, the reserves. Most of the people who were in the reserves in this last war, they were over there so many more than regular active duty people, and that's not how the reserves was originally meant to be.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, Rick, where do they find your books at? Is it Amazon? Is that where they find
Yeah,
them?
that's where I am exclusively right now. I'm pretty sure there's some small bookstores buying them because I see them going out through Ingram, the paperbacks, but they're readily available on Amazon.
Yeah, I'm on your website also.
Oh yeah. If you click on my website, click on a particular book that you want to look at, it'll take you to my Amazon storefront, and then you can go through that and see all the books.
Did you know that you can also set that up on your website to where you click on it, it takes you to Ingram, to where you get most of the money than Amazon? I'm an author too, by the way. That's how I know that.
Oh, we need to talk. So I met a woman who is just fantastic, and she mentioned that you need something about Ingram, and
you just go to Ingram, and in there you can get a link for your book, and then on your website you can put that link on your website, and they click on it. It takes you to the store inside Ingram, so they can just purchase that book or whatever you want, and you can set it up to where you get not the $2 or whatever, you get the most of the money. Versus the other way, where Amazon gets, the $7 and you get the couple bucks. It's complete opposite. You can set up same price, but you get most of the money.
Well, appreciate that, Ed.
Well, I'll tell you more about it after we get done here.
Okay.
But I'm just, I didn't realize that it came out after my book came out. And so I was sending everybody to Amazon, and then I was like, no, don't you know that someone else told me? And I went in and researched it. So if you go to my website, you click on it, it takes you to my little Ingram Spark page where you can just buy the book direct instead of going to Amazon.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, because then, if you sell 1,000 books and you now make $7, that's a lot more than 1,000 books at $3.
Yeah, that's for sure. Right.
Not, I don't know what you sell, but I'm just saying it's nicer to have it to where you make the money. Yes, you send them to Amazon, they can put the reviews, but you don't always need all those reviews where you are now, right?
Well,
they can put the reviews on your website. You can have somebody create, a little page on your website where they do a review and it stays on there. There's so many things you can do. Yeah. All right, sir. I appreciate you explaining your journey and everything about it, and then about your books. And I'm definitely going to reach out and get some of your books. I'll go online and download them. I should say buy them, but maybe I'll wait till you get on your website. Just kidding.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate you being here, and thanks for talking about and sharing your story.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you.